The clicker slipped from my fingers and clattered onto the polished mahogany table. I stood frozen in the sunlit conference room on the 10th floor of Orbital Shield Technologies headquarters outside Washington, D.C. My tailored shirt suddenly too tight around the collar. Victor Lang, our CEO, stepped forward with that practiced executive smile, his hand reaching into my breast pocket to remove my security badge as if plucking a loose thread. "That's enough, Alex," he said smoothly into the open microphone, his voice echoing through the room filled with investors in crisp suits. "You've laid the foundation admirably. But we're pivoting the demo now." Laughter rippled, polite, restrained, the kind that cuts deeper than shouts. Jordan Ellis, the new rising star with his sharp haircut and confident stride, took the stage, tablet in hand, launching into buzzword-filled talk about agile modernization and user-centric interfaces. My detailed slides on the resonance protocol remained frozen on the massive screen behind us. Ignored. 15 years. 15 years buried 3 levels underground in the windowless lab in Reston, Virginia, breathing recirculated air that smelled of ozone and solder, building the invisible nervous system that kept America's orbital defense satellites synchronized and secure. I had sacrificed everything for the Pulse network. Weekends vanished into late-night coding sessions where I refined the self-verifying rhythm that pulsed across satellite clusters, detecting anomalies in electromagnetic interference or spoof signals before they could blind our eyes in the sky. Birthdays missed. My marriage crumbling under the weight of endless NDAs and 2 a.m. commits. My ex-wife's lawyer had called it chronic emotional absence, and she wasn't wrong. But the Pulse wasn't just code, it was alive in a way only I understood. Layered with undocumented adaptive cycles that breathed in perfect sync, like a heartbeat confirming every node was secure. No one upstairs knew my name without an org chart lookup. To Victor and the board, I was the bunker guy, the one who fixed the impossible bugs in the dark. They handed out pizza Fridays and mugs for team milestones, but when the plumbing failed for days, we handled it ourselves, sweeping floors between server racks humming like distant thunder. The system monitored missile signatures, rerouted classified beams, and coordinated AI responses faster than any human could. Without it, cities could go dark before alarms sounded. Yet I never documented the deepest layers. Not out of secrecy, but necessity. The rhythm was intuitive, evolving through years of my solitary tweaks during solar storms or test runs. It responded to patterns only I had taught it over a decade. As Jordan mangled terminology I had coined, mispronouncing resonance cascade like it was a marketing slogan. I buttoned my jacket and walked out. The sun hit my face in the parking garage like a slap. I left my dented thermos behind, that faithful companion of cold coffee and grease stains. But pride, or was it exhaustion, kept me from returning. Later that evening, curiosity pulled me back to the building's lobby cameras via an old contact. I overheard Victor briefing the new team. The core is plug and play now. Alex built it solid, but we modernized the interfaces. They laughed about simplifying legacy constraints. That night, something inside me snapped, not in rage, but in a cold clarity. They owned the patents and servers, but the Pulse lived in rhythms they couldn't see. I went home to my quiet apartment, poured a drink, and watched the stars from my balcony, wondering if the satellites above still felt my absence. The first subtle glitch came 3 days later. A minor desync in the European cluster reported internally. The new team dismissed it as atmospheric noise. They had already renamed key variables for clarity and commented out fallback verification loops, calling them redundant bloat. The tension built slowly in the following weeks. Engineers who remained loyal sent discreet messages. Jordan's team was rewriting documentation into flowcharts with Comic Sans, treating the Pulse like a simple app. I chuckled dryly at my kitchen table. But the humor faded as delays mounted. The system wasn't breaking, it was hesitating, like a trusted friend sensing strangers in the room. My phone stayed silent at first. Then came the texts from unknown numbers. Resonance lag on node 17? Pulse verification failing override. I didn't reply. Why should I? They had stripped my badge mid-sentence, paraded my replacement, and toasted to fresh perspectives. Victor spun it publicly as a seamless transition on industry podcasts, praising hungry new talent streamlining complexity. Investors nodded along, comforted by dashboards glowing green despite the underlying stagger in the rhythm only I could hear. But deep down, I knew the machine was retreating into itself, waiting for the voice it recognized. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it exposed the hubris of believing genius could be boxed, renamed, and handed off like a company car. The glitches escalated quietly at first, hidden behind corporate euphemisms. A surveillance satellite in the Pacific cluster dropped offline for 7 seconds during a routine calibration. Long enough for ground control to lose live telemetry, but short enough for the new team to log it as transient latency. Jordan's updates boasted of optimized code paths, while they gutted the undocumented adaptive filters that had prevented false positives from triggering unnecessary alerts. I monitored from afar through old contacts and public defense feeds, my coffee growing cold as the pattern emerged. Each change chipped away at the self-healing cycles I had woven in during lonely nights in the lab. One engineer, a veteran named Maria who had survived the purge, risked sending screenshots. The team had disabled the shadow diagnostic layer, calling it non-essential overhead. That layer was the Pulse's gut instinct, cross-checking inputs against historical rhythms before committing to actions. Without it, the satellites began treating benign signals with suspicion. A test drone from an allied exercise was briefly flagged as hostile, triggering a soft lockdown that lasted minutes. No public panic yet, but military liaisons started asking pointed questions in closed briefings. Victor called an all-hands, framing issues as expected growing pains in our agile refactor. The boardroom echoed with applause for buzzwords like machine learning integration, but I knew the truth from Maria's updates. The system was curling inward, loops failing to sync because the tempo had been altered by hands that didn't feel its original pulse. My ex-colleagues whispered about morale crashing. Donuts appeared in the lab as a team builder, untouched by those who remembered the real cost of vigilance. The weight of my decision pressed heavier each night. I could have drafted a few commands to resync the nodes remotely, restoring the heartbeat in lines of code born from years of intuition. But every time my finger hovered over the keyboard, memories flooded back. The public humiliation, the badge dangling like a trophy, Jordan's grin as he claimed credit for my schematics. Corporate America had taught me well, loyalty flows one way, from the trenches upward, until it's convenient to discard. By the end of the month, the first major incident hit. 3 satellites in the Atlantic constellation entered passive mode uncommanded during a joint NATO simulation. For nearly 5 minutes, critical intercept data went dark. The Pentagon demanded answers. Victor appeared on a defense tech panel, smiling through sweat, attributing it to minor integration hiccups post-modernization. Behind closed doors, the new leadership scrambled, rolling back some changes only to introduce new bugs, further disrupting the delicate balance. I received a late-night call from a block number. Alex, it's urgent. The resonance protocol won't initialize. We need your insight on the verification cadence. The voice was young, desperate. Probably one of Jordan's juniors realizing the documentation was a facade. I listened in silence, then hung up without a word. The power of that moment wasn't vengeance. It was the quiet realization that my 15 years had created something irreplaceable, a living architecture that rejected imposters. Rumors spread in industry forums. whispers of the phantom architect whose departure coincided with the anomalies. Stock in Orbital Shield dipped 4%. Not catastrophic, but enough to rattle investors who had bet on Victor's vision of youthful innovation. He doubled down in emails, announcing Heartbeat 2.0 rebranding, ironic, since they had broken the original Pulse without understanding its name. The social cost hit home too. Old friends from the industry distanced themselves, fearing association with failure. My apartment felt emptier. The stars outside colder reminders of the sky I once protected. Yet in the building tension, I felt no regret, only a deepening sorrow for the fragility exposed. Corporations chase shiny metrics and fresh faces, blind to the human rhythm that sustains complex systems. The Pulse wasn't code, it was memory, caution, and trust forged in isolation. Military scrutiny intensified when Colonel Harlan Reeves arrived unannounced at headquarters, his uniform crisp and expression granite hard. The boardroom meeting leaked through back channels. Reeves demanded the primary resonance key, the embedded master sequence governing core handshakes across the fleet. Victor stammered through corporate jargon about integrated access hierarchies, but Reeves cut through. Who controls the foundational cadence? Not your logins, the protocol seed. Silence fell because no one knew. The key wasn't a password or API. It was a private initialization rhythm I had hard-coded during a grueling 3-week isolation in the lab, fueled by caffeine and the ache of missing family milestones. It lived undocumented, designed to recognize only my specific command patterns after years of calibration. The colonel left without handshake, his departure signaling deeper investigations. Victor's polished facade cracked in follow-up calls. He reached out personally, voice laced with forced camaraderie. Alex, there have been misunderstandings in the transition. The team's hitting walls with legacy elements. We're prepared to offer a generous consulting role. Name your terms. I stood by my window overlooking the suburban sprawl, phone pressed to ear, and replied flatly, "You took the system from me mid-sentence." Victor. Turns out, I took its soul with me. The line went dead after his sputtering protests about national security and congressional oversight. I didn't gloat. The cold satisfaction stemmed from witnessing hubris meet reality. They had renamed directories, installed flashy monitoring tools, and paraded modernized dashboards, but the satellites above hesitated. Their responses sluggish without the guiding tempo. Glitches snowballed. A key asset misidentified commercial aircraft pings as potential threats, forcing manual overrides that exposed vulnerabilities in live ops. Investors demanded transparency. Shares wobbled further. Jordan issued frantic internal memos blaming incomplete knowledge transfer, but the old guard knew better. Maria's final message before her exit read, "It's not malfunctioning, it's waiting. Waiting for you." Psychologically, the isolation amplified. Nights blurred into reflections on my sacrifices, the divorce papers signed over lukewarm coffee, the brothers' wedding I skipped for a critical patch. Society praises innovation but discards its architects when convenient, favoring youth and optics over depth. The Pulse embodied that Malthuan, brilliant yet vulnerable because it mirrored my cautious, layered nature. As pressure mounted, Victor's team attempted brute force patches, worsening desyncs. One satellite cluster went fully dark for 8 minutes during a high-stakes exercise, prompting urgent Pentagon reviews. Headlines emerged cautiously. Orbital defense anomalies raise questions on recent leadership changes. No names, but forums buzzed with speculation about the fired veteran. I walked my neighborhood that evening, boots on pavement, gazing upward. The sky held its secrets. The machines I built now adrift without recognition. The moral weight settled. Was my silence justice? Or abandonment of duty? They wanted the kingdom without the king. And now the gates were sealed by the very rhythms they dismissed. The breaking point arrived at 3:12 a.m. Eastern Time. Vantage 7. A thermal imaging satellite over the northern Pacific erroneously classified an Allied test asset as intrusion, cascading into a failsafe lockdown across linked nodes. 6 minutes and 50 seconds of blackout ensued. No reliable feeds. No coordinated responses. Ground teams scrambled blindly. The absence of the resonance pulse turning a precision instrument into scattered fragments. By dawn, the story exploded across defense blogs. Then mainstream outlets. Reuters. CNN. Industry analysts dissecting internal chaos post-restructuring. Shares plummeted 12%. Half the board faced calls for resignation. The Pentagon issued veiled statements about contract reevaluations. Engineers resigned en masse. Slack channels emptying with terse goodbyes. Screenshots from insiders revealed panic. Without the core cadence. "We're guessing at every command," Victor flailed publicly, hinting at sabotage in interviews. But whispers countered. Perhaps the system simply rejected the new custodians. A desperate voicemail from Jordan himself admitted, "We underestimated the architecture's personality. I deleted it." The word personality striking true. The pulse behaved like an extension of me. Deliberate. Skeptical of hasty changes. Protective of its integrity. Legal threats followed. Subpoenas loomed for cooperation in national security matters. My lawyer advised caution. But the NDA I had signed couldn't compel undocumented knowledge. In a roadside diner off I-66, vinyl booth creaking under me, burnt coffee in hand, I fielded another call from a Pentagon switchboard. "Mr. Rivera, this is beyond corporate. Lives depend on restoring functionality." I sipped slowly, letting silence speak. The waitress refilled without question, sensing a man carrying invisible burdens. The collapse revealed deeper truths about American tech culture: glorification of disruption over stewardship, youth over experience, metrics over intuition. My 15 years weren't just labor. They forged a bond the machine echoed. Without it, satellites defaulted to safe modes, curling inward like a wounded organism. Victor's empire of buzzwords crumbled under the weight of ignored human elements. As congressional hearings loomed, I felt the hollow echo, not triumph, but a profound question lingering, in pursuit of progress. How often do we discard the very rhythms that sustain us? The stars above remained watchful, but quieter now, waiting for a voice that might never return. In the aftermath, Orbital Shield reeled. Black SUVs lined headquarters daily. Colonel Reeves' team conducted forensic audits, uncovering how streamlining had severed the adaptive heart. Victor resigned under pressure. Jordan faded into obscurity with tarnished reputation. The company issued vague statements about comprehensive reviews, but insiders knew the pulse was irretrievable without its originator. Satellites stabilized in minimal modes, but full capability remained elusive. I returned to the diner often, anonymous among truckers and travelers, the hum of highway traffic mirroring the lost server fans. My hands no longer twitched with phantom debugging. Instead, a steady calm prevailed. The betrayal had stripped illusions. Corporations treat people as interchangeable parts. Yet complex systems demand irreplaceable souls. My refusal wasn't cruelty. It preserved dignity after erasure. Friends occasionally reached out, some offering quiet solidarity, others probing for secrets. I shared nothing. The moral dilemma haunted quieter moments, duty to nation versus self-respect. Had I abandoned the greater good, or exposed systemic arrogance that endangered it more? The pulse had been my legacy, a silent guardian born of neglect and perseverance. In its absence, America confronted the cost of forgetting its guardians. One clear night, thermos in hand, retrieved symbolically from storage, I stepped onto my balcony. The sky glittered unchanged, yet I sensed the hesitation overhead. The machine slept, awaiting recognition it would never receive again. In that stillness, the story's truth crystallized. True innovation isn't owned by suits or slides. It lives in the undocumented beats of dedicated hearts. They chased control but lost the rhythm. And as questions of loyalty, hubris, and human essence lingered unanswered, I wondered if society would ever learn before the next darkness fell. The end left an echo. What happens when we fire the only one who truly understands the heartbeat keeping us safe?